Hello, I'm David Hughes. Welcome to Section 2 of the Bhagavad-gita. Last time we talked about Chapter 1 and how Arjuna had a problem about fighting his relatives on the Battle of Kurukshetra. Today we'll begin discussing Chapter 2. Here's the URL where you can find the online text. Download it and read it so you know what we're talking about. In Chapter 2 of Bhagavad-gita, there are three main topics: the solution to all problems, the science of the soul, and how to recognize a self-realized soul. The second chapter opens with Arjuna accepting Krishna as his spiritual master. Up to now, they have been talking as friends. But Arjuna realizes that he can't solve his problem by himself. Therefore, he surrenders to Krishna as a spiritual master and begs him, "Please instruct me." Actually, this is the solution to all the problems of life. As we discussed last time, the cause of our problems is ignorance, specifically spiritual ignorance, about ourselves, God, and our relationship with Him. Therefore, the solution to our problems is to eliminate the cause by accepting transcendental knowledge. Now, the best source of this knowledge is God, because after all, God knows everything. So when Krishna speaks Bhagavad-gita, he's speaking to Arjuna, but actually he's speaking to all of us, giving us specific knowledge of the soul, the personality of Godhead, and the absolute truth. So how does Krishna instruct Arjuna? Well, first of all, he says, don't lament. Lamenting never helps anybody solve their problems. Now, does it? We have a saying, don't cry over spilt milk, meaning that if you spill the milk, no matter how much you cry, you'd never get it back in the bottle again. So lamentation is really useless. It's wasted energy. Maybe by lamenting, we're hoping somebody else is going to come along and solve our problems. But that doesn't really work. We are responsible for the condition we're in, and we are also responsible for getting ourselves out of it. We're responsible for the cause and the effect of our actions. We may not like this, but that's the way it is. So crying about it is not going to help anything. Krishna recommends, first of all, don't lament, don't cry, don't be depressed, don't become paralyzed by bad feelings. Put those feelings aside and act. And by Arjuna's example, what our actions should be is to take refuge or shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, a teacher who knows the truth and can articulate and communicate it to us for our benefit. So by learning the science of spiritual life, we'll reach that point beyond all lamentation, when we understand the absolute truth. Krishna says, the wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. Because after all, what can we change by lamenting? It just stops us from taking the action that we need to do to solve our problems. The first thing we have to understand is the science of the soul. The soul is the self. The body is just an external covering of the soul. The body is temporary, but the soul is eternal, immortal, and indestructible. Nothing that happens in this temporary world can harm the immortal soul. The soul takes bodies like we put on and take off clothes. So we may change from this body to another body, but that doesn't change who we really are. Who we really are is a spirit soul in an eternal relationship with God. The more we can understand about that relationship, the better our condition will be. The happier we'll be, the less problems we'll have, and the more facility we'll have for doing whatever we want to do. So Bhagavad-gita teaches us, first of all, the science of the soul. And what is true about the soul is true about all spiritual things. Everything that is temporary, changing, or has a beginning or an end is material. But the soul is immortal, eternal, and indestructible. So is the spiritual world. So is God. And so is spiritual truth. These truths are eternal and unconditional. They're not dependent on any circumstances. They are true for all time, in all places, for all individuals, and in all conditions of life or existence. This is called absolute truth. And we should understand the difference between material and spiritual. Material things are affected by time and conditions and have a beginning and an end. But spiritual things are always eternal. They don't have any beginning or end because they exist in a higher dimension beyond space and time. So the first thing we have to understand is the difference between the body and the soul. The body is temporary, so nothing can save it. And the soul is immortal, so nothing can harm it. The soul is really the self, and the body is just a covering over that original self. So as soon as we accept a material body, we're in illusion because we're identifying this body as the self. We have to get out of this illusion and come to understand that we are a soul. The first symptom of the soul is consciousness. Therefore, by investigating the science of consciousness, we can understand the self, the nature of the soul, and by extrapolation, the nature of God. Just like the difference between the body and the soul is that the body is temporary and the soul is eternal, the difference between the soul and God is that the soul is the part and God is the whole. In the Sri Ishopanishad, God is called the complete whole, the sum total of everything that exists. Plus, he is a transcendental person. Just like we are persons with individuality, identity, thoughts, feelings, will, emotions, and so on, God is also a person. Just like my father and mother are persons, their fathers and mothers are persons, and so on, all the way back to God, who is the original person, Adi Purusha. So we could not exist if God was not a person. We could not have these qualities unless God also has these qualities. He is the source, and we are his energy, or his creation. As soon as we understand this, then the next step is to understand what is the solution to our problems. We're suffering because of karma. Everything we do produces an unintended result. Therefore, the secret to getting out of material problems is to stop creating karma. How do we do that? When we deliberately give up the result of our work for a higher spiritual purpose, then that work does not create karma. Therefore, we should not hesitate nor lament, but we should work according to spiritual principles, giving up the result of our actions as a sacrifice to God. By doing this, we become detached from the results of our activities, we become free from karma, and we also get into a position where we can realize our actual spiritual identity. This is the art and science of devotional service. And actually the conclusion of Bhagavad-gita is that we should dovetail all of our work in devotional service by offering the results of our activities to God. And as we go through Bhagavad-gita, we'll discuss more and more details on how to actually do this. Om Namo Bhagavate